Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode number 30 of ChangeMakers. We have a very interesting guest today from Hollywood, John Paul Rice, but it's going to be a little bit of a different conversation than you might expect. I think you guys are really going to like this one. So please share this out there. You know, typically we don't talk about politics on this on ChangeMakers, but today there's probably going to be some tie-in. We're going to talk about the world that is Hollywood. We're going to talk about the world that we are in right now. We're going to talk about the change being created by John Paul Rice. John began his film career in Georgia. He's worked on films all the way back as We Were Soldiers and Remember the Titans, and then worked at a studio that created movies that you might have heard of. One of my mom's favorites, actually, Harold and Kumar, was at this studio. And then he also started producing as well. And he's got some really great films that he has done, including Nice Quiet Life, A Child's Voice, and also a really just interesting look at a new movie that he's got coming out called Game Day. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and it's all about positivity and learning about one another and creating just a kind of a new way of looking at Hollywood movies. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. I encourage you guys to share it right now, and we're going to get started in about 30 seconds. So hit that share button, hit the hearts, hit the likes, hit the thumbs up, all the things that tricks the algorithms. Trust me, you guys are going to enjoy this show. Starting in 30 seconds, let's go with ChangeMakers. What's going on, everybody? You all know the rub on ChangeMakers. If you haven't watched this before, this is the show where we get to talk about people that are creating change in the world, creating the ripple effects that we want to see, the things that actually create change, whether it be from youth programs, whether it be from abuse, getting people out of that, opening people's minds to new thought process. This is going to be that episode. As usual on a Wednesday night, we're a little bit slow, which means I need you guys to do me a huge favor and share this out there. Share this very fun episode that we are going to do. As Nikki says, please share this out. It's so funny now that I had everybody switch their logo to the BetheChange with the flag. I don't know who's writing anything. It was a clever idea to start, and then here we are. So again, hit the like button, hit the thumbs up. If you are on YouTube right now and you want to make sure you get all of our videos, make sure you hit not just the subscribe, but the little bell button. That's going to let you guys know when we go live. Also, if you want to hit the hearts or thumbs up on YouTube, you got to shift the comments off to the side if you're watching on the phone and then hit it there. Also, as you guys always know, these go live a couple days later on our podcast network. So make sure you follow our podcast network right here, #BeTheChange.com/podcast. It's on all the major stations, networks, etc. Apple, etc. What else? What do you got? Apple and Spotify and one other one. Anyways, it's on all of those, so make sure you go and do that. That's the best way to help us if you are not able to donate or give to our cause or our support. If you ever want to help, this is where you do it. You're going to go to patreon.com/BeTheChangeUSA. Those people get a little extra as well. They get motivational Mondays that are a little bit different than the ones that we do live. And of course, any opportunities to update you on things that we've got going on, Patreons know first, and that allows us to keep doing what we are doing. Now, right now in the comment box, so again, we can get that algorithm going before we get this show started. I need everybody to say hello and let us know where you are from. I see Rose, I see Rhonda, Don, I was going to say Doc, close enough. Maria, what's going on? I know that we've had Maria on one of our episodes of ChangeMakers as a sepsis survivor. We've had so many cool episodes. I can't believe we're on episode number 30. All right, ladies and gents, I'm going to look for those comments on the outside. And right now I am going to introduce all of you guys to our guests on this show. And this gentleman and I were talking a little bit backstage, and I think this is going to take some interesting left and right turns. It's going to be an interesting conversation that we don't always have on ChangeMakers. So please make sure you share this because it's going to be a fun one. So ladies and gentlemen, you already heard a little bit about him, and I'm going to let him introduce himself some more. Again, filmmaker, producer, actor earlier in his career, and also an activist for children, and creating awareness in this world and opening people's eyes to what is going on. So, ladies and gentlemen, John Paul Rice.
Hey, Anthony, what an introduction. Thank you so much for having me on today. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
No problem, John. It's actually our pleasure to have you because, again, I can't wait to have this conversation. Before we get into all the details and the fun stuff, and I see everybody on the outside saying where they're from, Connecticut, New Hampshire, former Georgia resident, excellent. Tell everybody a little bit about you, how you got started in Hollywood, a little bit about who you are, etc., where you're at now.
Yeah, so in 1999, I had the fortunate experience of being cast as a Titan football player in Remember the Titans with Denzel Washington. That was here in Georgia. And it was an experience where I had a couple lines on camera, but I was in every scene that the team was there. I got featured in a couple of scenes, but I worked on that for almost 2 months. And it totally changed my life. I was in school for business. I wasn't really doing much in college, but that experience with film changed my life. And I ended up going out to Los Angeles for the premiere the year later. And from there, 3 months later, I was literally heading out across country in my car to Los Angeles to live there to be an actor. Long story short is 6 long months that I was there as an actor. I did really well. I had an agent and a manager within the first month I was in LA. That's not really heard of. I went out for X-Men 2, couple of national commercials, some independent films, get cast in some other smaller things. And I found myself working as an entry-level position where I was answering phones and reading scripts. Like everybody does in LA, when you get out there and you're going to get an entry-level job, you got to start at the bottom and work your way up. So for 4 years, I spent at that company. They ended up doing Juno, The Grudge, Harold and Kumar, Stranger Than Fiction, The Grudge. That producer, Joseph Drake, he was an executive producer. He was my mentor for 4 years over that time at the company. And he ended up going back to Lionsgate and doing the Hunger Games series as the executive producer. But Joe instilled in me a work ethic that I found to be appealing because my talents lie elsewhere outside of acting, whereas I wanted to be a star, a film star, right? With big, grandiose visions in my head, but they were dreams still at the same time. And having a set of misfortunes over the last, let's just say, call it 19, 20 years, which was I'd never got what I wanted. But in the process of not getting what I wanted, I found exactly what I am supposed to be doing. And that was that early on, I was I wouldn't say I was a force in Hollywood. That's a big, but I was meeting at 25, I was meeting with the top level people, like the Harry Potter people, the Fox people, like all the things that independent film producers dream of being able to do to pitch their ideas to studios and bigger companies in order to get the big names and the big money and the big backing and all that. And most of the filmmakers that I talked to on the independent circuit who were successful were always talking about having to get your film in Sundance, having to be at this prestigious level of representation in order for these other people to take notice. And in fact, that wasn't the case for me. So I knew that there was a perception out there that this is how it was supposed to work, but it really worked another way. Needless to say, I did not get what I wanted after 3 years of working through those channels. And ultimately, my producing partner and I came to a point where we had gotten 80% of our funding. We had a distribution company backing it, and it was all contingent on these bigger things happening. And those bigger things fell apart, and then the film fell apart, and we were back to square one. And this happens all the time. This was in 2007, 2008. And we went to go find a film. We was like, he said, we're going to make a film this year, but it's going to be with our own money. And of course, we had no money. So that was, and we had a little money, but we didn't have enough money to make a whole
not
movie.
moving making money. Yeah.
Right, not movie making money. We're talking about like going from $2 to $3 to $5 to $10 million, and now my salary of what I would have made on those big budgets was the total budget of the film I was about to do.
Right.
So, but the film was called 1 Hour Fantasy Girl, and it was based on a true story about a young woman working out of a motel room in Hollywood where she did fantasies for men at $150 an hour, but there was no sex, no nudity, and it was 100% legal. And you ask yourselves, like, well, what kind of fantasies do people do with a hot girl that they're paying $150 an hour for? Well,
right.
That's where your mind kind of goes wild and you realize that there's a deeper story here. And so that movie, when we put it out there, had a lot of women. This was in 2008, 2009. A lot of women who were very apprehensive about the title, about the representation of the character. And it turned out to be that women overwhelmingly loved this movie because, and actually people in Hollywood did, a guy by the name of Mario Casar, if you look him up, he did the Rambo, Terminator 2, he made the action heroes. He made Stallone, that mega A-level action hero, Schwarzenegger, all of those guys. He saw the film and he said it was good. I mean, not just like, oh, wow, Mario Casar says it, but Mario Casar had heard about the movie and wanted a copy and actually came to me and asked me for it. And there were people in the industry that reviewed it. Long story short is 6 films later, I'm now in 2017 having done independent films this way and realizing that I am getting further and further away from the industry. And the industry really is getting further and further away from me. And not just in a political sense. This is as I'm a liberal. This is as I'm a Democrat. This is as I'm doing a gay independent film in 2015 called A Nice Quiet Life about 2 young college students who are in school together, one an engineer, the other one a linguist. They fall in love, and one of them begins developing schizophrenia. Now, I say a gay film, but it's not like a gay agenda film. It just so happens that these 2 characters happen to be gay, and the story it could be anything. It could be anybody, right? I'm not defending it or trying to deflect it, but if you watch the film, it's like, yes, there's a little bit of the gay flavor of it, but the point I'm making is that I took this to GLAAD. GLAAD had an entertainment division, and GLAAD watched the movie, and I have the email that comes back and says, we really appreciate what you tackled in this film because it was really important. And there were a lot of people that liked it, but they came back, and this is in 2015, they said, but our gay audiences today don't want to see white people. They want to see queer, trans, Black, Asian,
Wow.
Latinx, all the Latino. And the way they were prefacing it was that, well, we understand the challenges of casting a film like this, but you only have minority representation in these smaller roles, and therefore we're not going to get involved. And
wow.
I was just like, I wasn't shocked, but I was kind of like, how do you disqualify a film on the merits of its importance, for which we even sought out doing this film because of schizophrenia and mental health being underserved by the gay community? So that the awareness of it was...
Apparently mental health is passé at this point. Their mental health didn't matter. It's more about it was
identity. It had to do with it had to do with identity politics, and from there on out, what I began to see was this movement away from anything that dealt with mental health, child abuse, human trafficking, and then I came into 2017. And 2017, for me, just in short, went from 2015, Bernie Sanders, 2016, having my heart broken. And I have a weird story in this. I actually know what happened to Bernie Sanders, and I told Bernie Sanders, and I told his wife how he had been cheated. I figured it out, not just on like the super delegates or the caucuses and all the storylines, but I actually broke down the original results, and I told her he won with 70% of the vote in the Democrat primary. And that includes the southern states as well that they said were her firewall. So when Sidney Powell, I'm just letting for your viewers know, but when Sidney Powell gave those interviews right after the election, and she said that Bernie Sanders had been told about this scorecard hammer thing, that was me. And that was me giving it to Sidney Powell and me telling her and giving her all the data and the evidence. And I went state by state. And what we did was we did an algorithm that pulled the data every 10 seconds from the Secretary of State's websites. And we saw where they deleted hundreds of thousands and millions of votes in a very short period of time to make it so that the results would favor her every time. He actually turned out more people than her and Obama in 2008 combined.
Would not doubt it.
So,
Would not doubt it.
So that was when I knew that back then. But when Trump got elected, I freaked the hell out because I didn't see the whole deception going on here. And it's layers within layers. So nobody can say it's like, oh, it was obvious to me. It's like, no, you don't realize I had an Arab girlfriend who was Muslim at the time. And I was terrified. And that night we were out and she was the first one to say, he's just a stupid businessman like everybody else.
Right.
And she said, we love him. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's a racist. He's a xenophobe. Like all of that crap.
All the things that we thought. Yeah.
Now, all the things that I thought. And so what happened was it wasn't that, but it was a series of sort of freakouts and then realizations and then listening to other people and going, okay, obviously there are people really happy about this guy being president. I want to know why they are. I'm not going to be that dude that goes, oh, screw, because I did do that. I blocked people that year. I'm like, I can't believe you're voting for Trump, all this stuff. And then I got into human trafficking of children in 2017 after the inauguration. And I would say by June, July, 4 years ago, I had learned certain things that I could not unsee. I had read certain things that I could not unthink about. I had seen videos presented to me randomly, didn't ask for it, where I saw live organ trafficking being done on a young man in a jungle where his entire front of his body was sliced open and they were cutting parts of himself out of him while he was still alive. And for 2 years, I contemplated the horror of the world. My business partner and I, in 2017, upon learning about this horror on a higher level than what had been previously discussed or even been a conspiracy, we had many sleepless nights, but we put together A Child's Voice. We did that movie. We made a film about human trafficking of small children, not young women, small children. Because what we learned was that there was an international network of people that were connected to the highest levels of power and across all institutions, and they had nests of their pedo rings. It gets really intense beyond anything that most people even know today with even Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
But John, this is all just conspiracy stuff, isn't it? Like this isn't really happening.
Here's what I tell people. I say, you don't have to believe anything that I say. Go listen to the people who lived it. Go listen to Anna K. Lucas, who in 2016 on Real Women, Real Stories gave her testimony. She also did a TED Talk. They never invited her back after that. She talks about the blood-stained wood blocks where children were sacrificed on altars, and she was a part of those pedo rings where they literally took pleasure in killing children. Ronald Bernard came forward. He was another one in 2017. He's actually the impetus of our movie, talking about this 8,000 to 8,500 who actually run the world and are Luciferian in their belief system. They hate all life on this planet. They believe that they are gods, and they sacrifice children ritualistically because they know what we are. They know that we come from a creator of heaven and earth, that all children born into this world, no matter what your religious beliefs are, all children born in this world are manifesting that divine light before anything of the programming begins. So those are really hard things to kind of take in, but then you start learning about others in court cases, Franklin scandal, documents. I mean, there's enough out there now in the public space, or has been disclosed online in the last 4 or 5 years, if you can still find it, to really implicate that there are massive amounts of people over decades in our modern history who have participated in the ritualistic torture, murder, and sacrifice of children. And let me just say this: you don't have to be a psychopath who murders children to murder children's souls. Soul murder of children is child abuse. And that's really one thing that I've learned throughout all of this time, is that when people ask me, John, what is, or not me, they don't come to me, but when they ask, well, what is the most pressing issue of our time? Doesn't racism ring, true? Like, I'm not discounting how people feel for a second. I'm just saying,
Right.
is racism an issue? Is racism an issue? Yes, it is. You better damn well believe it's an issue in a world where there's a $150 billion a year industry called human trafficking that brings in innocent men, women, and children every single year to the tune of 40, 50 million of them, and they have to keep replenishing those lines. So if you have modern day slavery, yeah, you got racism. There's a lot of racism. You got hatred going on. What I learned in this time was that our reality, as we are experiencing it, is co-created by people who use blood sacrifice ritual and trauma ritual in order to stir up their shit in the world. In other words, COVID-19, no matter what you think of it, what you know about it, what you don't know, what you believe, doesn't matter. Consider where we are today if the news had been responsible at the beginning in terms of how they reported it. Just that alone, acknowledging its existence, acknowledging whatever it is that you believe. Did the media do a responsible job in terms of how people were responding to the idea globally that any single one of the 7.5 billion people on this planet could die at any moment from a disease that they could not see? And my question would be, they literally take tens of millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical companies to run ads on their network programs in between the news that they give you. So that's who they answer to.
Exactly.
And my thing is that at the end of the day, where were the doctors on television telling everyone, 330 million Americans, as part of a Medicare for all or some national health care plan, to tell every American how you can boost your immune system with vitamin C, vitamin D, exercise, sleep, and a regular healthy diet?
Still waiting, John. We're still waiting for that. Still waiting.
So when I'm trying to condense a lot of things, but this human trafficking issue, I made a film that was about the awakening of the child within each and every one of us that said, I will help you. And this is a thing where, a lot of people, they don't want to get into it. I totally understand. I totally, completely understand why no one wants to believe this crap. But it's not something that you have to quote, now what do I do about it? What you're doing about it right now is asking that question. And that's the question you have to answer for yourself. Because what we tend to do is we always tend to go out there and say, this is what we need to do, and this is how we need to solve it, and these are the people that we need to defeat, and those are the ones, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And where we're at now is we're at a place where we need discussion, we need solutions, we need ideas. We don't need back and forth. We don't need debate. We don't need a right wing debating a false left wing and a false left wing influencing a false right wing. What we need are people that come together and say, you know what, I don't know the answer, but I do think that there are these things that we need to think about. We need to think about our local boys and girls club in the neighborhood, how I could spend a half hour or an hour a week with a child that needs my time, that actually needs my time, as opposed to spending a half hour or an hour over here on my social media and getting all the likes and everything else. That I'm just saying, it's like prioritize. Where are our priorities today? And when I look at this issue of human trafficking, the impetus of which, and pedophilia as well, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, neglect, humiliation of children. This is a child abuse system. If we're going to look at this objectively, we need to look at the psychology of this time. We have Jeffrey Epstein, who was a narcissist. A narcissist is a person in that world who is so controllable because all you need to do is fulfill the narcissist's drives, and they're fine. They'll take it. They'll do whatever you want as long as you fulfill those drives. They're not that smart. They're clever, but they're not intelligent, and they're not attuned to the reality that people are living in. This narcissistic energy is out there. It's not just on the left. It's affecting the right. It affects all of us because our narcissism is a entitlement from the past that we were denied as children the very thing that we were entitled to back then, which is unconditional love from a mother and father. And what happens is that we go out into the world gives us our identity, and we take it in. And then what we do further is we begin to take in the ideas and the identities of the world given to us because of those voids that are lingering behind. In other words, if you look at it on a macro level, Hollywood is putting up Ariana Grande, The Weeknd, Dojo Cat, all of these are icons. These are idols of worship for your children. They're idols of worship for young adults, not because they're bad people and they're thinking that, oh, I'm consciously following a Luciferian Satanist here, right? Or a mind-controlled slave. But what they're doing is they're projecting their own best things in life onto a person that they don't even know in real life, but yet have an emotional identity and connection to, an attachment to. And this is what I understood with child abuse and human trafficking of children, is that most of the prey that these people go after are around people, young children, that they can offer drugs, money, and alcohol to in order to lure them away from their homes, which should give everybody pause for a second to ask, how is it that a young girl or boy of such a young age could walk into a car with a stranger over alcohol, alcohol, money, or drugs? And that's really where we need to go. That's where we need to start looking at this, with child abuse being the reason for which it actually, and I'm saying this in a very bold but honest way, child abuse opens the portal for satanic worship. And satanic worship does not have to be you believing in the devil or you believing in Satan to do his bidding. Basically what it does is it takes you away from the divine being that you're born as when you come into this world, and prevents you from connecting to the deeper parts of yourself that you experienced in childhood.
Well, it makes sense because, you look at the parents, you look at the way the kids leave the home, and usually they're not looking for Satan. They're looking for an escape. They're looking, and a lot of times they come from religious homes, and that's what we're hearing now. Like the millennial age, the millennial group left religion and left God because their parents were uber spiritual but didn't have any, or uber religious and didn't have any connection to their children. And that's where we're seeing some of this run into. And you gave me a lot to unpack, but we looked at you look at some of the things that we've heard from Macaulay Culkin. I don't know if it was Corey Haim or if it was the other one. One of the Coreys, that they all talked about their abuse in Hollywood, and that they talked about what they saw, very similar to what you're saying. One of the Coreys is dead now, and Macaulay Culkin doesn't work anymore, and they think he's crazy. So this is what happens to people that start to buck the system in Hollywood. Yeah. If you don't go along with it, this is the trouble you get yourself in. which
Yep.
leads me to my next point. With your connections in Hollywood, and what you do now, obviously, is a lot of independent films. You're working on your own. You're self-financed in many ways. What kind of blowback do you get from Hollywood, people in Hollywood?
I don't get blowback. I mean, let me say last year was the year that I did a video that was an Instagram live video. It was almost a year ago next month, that went super viral. I think by our estimates, 80 to 100 million people saw it. Facebook, you remember when Facebook last year in August, they censored Save the Children?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, my video was a part of the reason why they censored it, because it was uploaded everywhere on Facebook and it had a hashtag Save the Children. Now, Save the Children had already been trending, right? But it exploded with that. And what had happened is that last year, between The Wayfarer and Ghislaine Maxwell, our film A Child's Voice was trending up on Amazon. It was moving up. Now, it wasn't like a number one film, but it was moving up because the searches for the film were going up. Human trafficking was going up, and Amazon, without telling us, without any warning, just unpublished it. And it was one of 6 films that we had up there, and it was one of our top performing movies over the last year and a half. And the interesting thing is they pulled that movie, and then they pulled 1 Hour Fantasy Girl from another country, and they pulled another one called Memories of a Lost Love. And all 3 of them dealt with, well, 2 of them dealt with, one was human trafficking of children, A Child's Voice. The other one, you can call it prostitution, human trafficking of a 20-year-old girl. And then the other one was called Memories of a Lost Love, and that dealt with child abuse from the parents in the home and mental health. And they took all 3 of those off. That's the pushback I've gotten. Now, the other stuff is private, but it's more spiritual, and I can handle that. The response that I've gotten from people in Hollywood is overwhelming, actually, in a very positive way. Now, I'm not talking about the A-lister stars. I'm talking about the people that have reached out to me privately and in messages, even blue check marks on Instagram and Twitter. They all know. A lot of them were waiting for somebody to finally say something. And I just happened to be that guy. I mean, David Rodriguez was there before me, and many others. Many other people have come before us. Cappy was there. I don't speculate on what happened to everybody, but I just know that I'm very fortunate and blessed to be here. And I know that it's far worse than anybody can imagine. If I could give this, like Ariana Grande, I don't know her personally, okay? So this is not an indictment or judgment about her. I'm just using her name so she's a visible person.
Figure, yeah.
These people at this level they don't have the money that Hollywood tells you that they do. It's all controlled. Britney Spears' conservatorship is just one of a half a dozen things that they do to control stars. They give them a monthly stipend, and that's it. But in order to get that, they have to do certain things for the record label, not just in music, but also the Illuminati, what we would call the Illuminati stuff, the symbolism, the Baphomet, the pentagram, the Masonic symbolism, the mind control, all of that crap. They have to do that. The butterfly, the covering of the eye, those magazines, all of that.
Yeah, look at Lil Nas X right now. Holy goodness gracious, talking about and he was. You have to think that he is on that exact same path. He is somebody that was considered a major child. Like he was the fan of all the kids.
He was a child fan of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds.
And next thing you know, he's stripping with the devil. I mean, it's like, how do you don't even ease into that? You went straight and he was completely forgiven, and he's playing at the Grammys. It's like, what? How is this if you think that this isn't, when we can get pulled for a post on Facebook for saying, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and then they allow that at the Grammys, we have to realize something is wrong.
Yeah, this is and the thing is that people's awareness stops at Hollywood. In other words, we get mad at Little Nas X, we get mad at the record company, we get mad at the industry, we get mad at it doesn't matter. They all feel this way. They believe what they believe, and they all feel this way. And I tell Christians this too. I said, you guys, I mean, Christians are in a really difficult situation right now because the church is going to be the churches are going to be dissolved in the current form over the next several years. That's part of the plan. And the truth of the matter is when you've despiritualized this world, when you've taken God out, when you've taken God in the real sense and placed God in churches with pastors and preachers and basically the Vatican, right? It all, in other words, there's a hierarchy where everything moves up, guys. It's not about what you believe in God. It's the hierarchy that's behind the whole thing. And so when you take God out of school, when you take God out of government, you take God out of science and split it up into all these little divisions and make science all about mechanical being as opposed to spiritual being. So you despiritualize all of this. What you're getting is a hypersexualized materialist culture coming through with spirituality involved. And what you're going to get with that every single time is occultism, witchcraft. You're going to get New Age. You're going to get moral relativism. You're going to get people who are in cults and who see themselves at a sociopathic, psychopathic, and narcissistic level better than you because they're more spiritual than you. And in justification of, like what I tell people is like Marxism as we're looking at it is not going to be the Marxism of the future. The Marxism of the 20th century is going to bleed over into the 21st century, and it's going to create an entire class of people who see outside of themselves the threat that stimulates the internal traumas that they're enduring and unaware of. The danger behind that is that they will then see you as a threat without having ever spoken a word to you. And we already see that on the left today, which is an authoritarian collective insanity, which is basically begging mother and father to come in and decide who is truthful and who is a liar, who is a good person and who is a bad person, who needs to be censored and who needs to be elevated, voices that need to be elevated. I mean, when you get to that level, what you're now talking about is a drive in people that is black and white and everything else is wrong. And having been through my own child abuse, because that's kind of how I relate to this whole time in a very dense way, but watching myself become angry at the world when part of that was true is what defeated me, though, at the same time. It prevented me from being creative. It prevented it wasn't it. And the way I try to tell people is like, people think it's a choice. It's like, no, it's a state of your being. It's not a thought process. It's not a ideology is not, oh, okay, I mentally agree with this. No, you have to emotionally agree with it. No matter how illogical your thought is, you emotionally have to agree with it to create the feeling and the agreement in you that creates the belief that it's real. When I look at Hollywood and going back to Little Nas X, one of the things that I'm trying to impress upon Christians is that the Marxists have you surrounded and they know all your weaknesses. Number one, all of the stereotypes of Christians being white, being bigots, being homophobic is all going to be used to be exploited in order to get more children to come to Satan. That is their ultimate goal. So when Little Nas, this is the perfect example, when Little Nas X dropped his music video and then he dropped the shoe and then he dropped the video after that, basically giving a big FU to everybody who had a problem with it, his fan base was all LGBTQI who defended him and in the comments by the thousands celebrated his right to free speech. They also went as far as to say that the reason why conservatives or Republicans, but really it was conservatives, had a problem with his music video was because they were homophobic. Right. So all of the falsehoods about that for which you and I have been watching these agendas unfold over time is going to be reaped. It was sown a long time ago. It's going to be reaped. So the identification with Satan is a natural conclusion for those who have been abused, because the outside world, again, is an enemy to them. And there's only identification in the thing that satisfies the very emotional being that you're in at that time. But let me say this. That's more philosophical. The most important thing right now people need to realize is that we have a record number of young people right now looking into satanic worship, like curious about it at a record level. There was a young woman here with a sweet face at a coffee shop that I was in 3 weeks ago, and I had a talk with her. And it wasn't like, let me tell you about Jesus Christ. It was more like, we struck up a conversation and I was telling her something and it was timely. She said, it's so funny you mentioned this, because my mother was a Christian, a devout Christian who abused me. Mm-hmm. So that was her relationship with a person of God, her mother, who hurt her. She's not going to be open to a stranger coming up and saying, you need to repent and believe and submit. Yeah. It's not going to reach her. But I gave her some things to think about. And it's no different than a little child that you love. They become alive in that moment right there. And it's like there's a connection. There's an honest person in front of them that has told them something very important. And not because I was telling her something very important. I was just being honest with her. And I was giving her things to consider and ask questions and say, well, and not like it was rehearsed. It wasn't like a set of questions I had ready for her. I just engaged in a conversation. I listened to her. I saw where she was going. And I said, okay, well, let me tell you a couple of things. And I told her from my lived experience, I was in Hollywood. This is what's going on. Didn't give her all the creepy, crazy shit that nobody can look up and have access to. But I just gave her like solid, practical things. And all of a sudden, her life is getting better. It's not what John Paul Rice wants and what I do or Anthony wants. It's what the effect of that has on somebody, because they're hearing the truth and they're able to finally see when they've been blind, and they can finally hear when they've been deaf to the truth. And the truth is most powerful when it's lived. See, the idol worship, the materialist culture, the get it while you can, the YOLO, all of that stuff, you've been hearing it for years. All of that only has an effect on people who were not loved as children. That's why it's taken in. And let me just say this. You can't walk up to these people and say, well, the reason why you're doing it is because you were not loved as a child. First of all, I'll tell you, go F off. And second, they don't have access to that. And even if they do, they're going to defend themselves because you're attacking them. So the question is like, what do? You have to create the world. You cannot leave it derelict to somebody else, because it's like this. If you don't take care of that child, somebody else will. Somebody else will speak to that child. Somebody else will have that conversation with your sister or your mother or your brother or your father. Somebody else will get to them where you did not, where you could have, because you can be somebody to somebody in your life. You can be to a child. Child doesn't see whether you're rich or poor. Child doesn't see whether you're educated or dumb. The child will always love the parent no matter what. And that's why this issue is so hard to reconcile, because our inner child loves our mother and father no matter what they did to us. It's the adult in us that has to be the adult for the inner child that lives inside our heart. The one that's scared, the one that's terrified, the one that doesn't want to come out and play in this world and withdraws from it. And when and let me just be clear, it's not evenly distributed, but the reason why we had record numbers of suicides, depressions, drug overdoses, homicides, human trafficking, child abuse, addiction spiking, obesity spiking, all of these negative health impacts are because we're damaging ourselves, not because society is doing it to itself, but unconsciously We are not realizing that we are precious, magnificent, incredibly magical beings that have constructed this reality or been part of this reality, but that there is a spiritual aspect to each and every one of us. And to get that connection back requires inner work. It does. It just simply is the way it is in this density, in this matter, that the soul work that needs to be done in order to heal will free up that space and allow more love to come in. We are hardwired for love. That's what we are when we're children. We are desiring to be loved so much when we are children that we will take whatever comes our way and try to make it into the very thing that it is not. And we will say that it's love even when it's not. And if you look at relationships in adults and how half of them end in divorce, how is that possible? Because at the beginning, they all believed at some level that it was going to work out, that it was going to lead to something greater than where they had been before.
Right.
And anyway, I know I'm kind of putting a lot out there, but
that's great.
I want people to understand this isn't so much about Hollywood. It's about a mirror into our soul. This time is a mirror into our soul. That's how we have to answer it.
John, you brought up something, and it's honestly, and again, and we're both in agreement that yes, the left has really big issues, but so does the right. There's issues with conservatives and Democrats at the same time. I try not to call the left liberals anymore because they don't abide by the definition of a true liberal. But there's this interesting conversation we had last night, which is, and it can be looked at it from a spiritual level, which is, you're talking about how you met that girl with kindness. You met her with your personal story and kind of, you met her where you are. Unfortunately, in this day, it met her where she was actually. In this day and age, we unfortunately tend to, especially the conservative side, they try to beat things over the head. Whereas the left, which if we're going to say, not that all leftists are Satan worshipers, not even close. I get that.
No,
but the Democratic Party has done a fantastic job almost being people's drug dealer. They meet them where they are. They sympathize. They empathize. They don't care about them improving or getting better, and they continue to give them the same drugs over and over. And unfortunately, the right, and sometimes the righteous, self-righteous, religious, overly religious right will come at them so hard and just strike them down and say, we're going to fix you, otherwise you're going to hell, and what you're doing is wrong. And that's not meeting them where they are. So I think this message that I'm hearing from you and that story, that anecdote was perfect, because you're meeting this girl that typically would be defensive especially with the message that you are bringing her. You're meeting her where she is, with a message that can help.
This is to every Christian out there. My question to you is this: what did Jesus do? Jesus was the Son of God who came in the form of a servant, a human, a full human being. Now, how you believe and don't believe what that is not my issue, but it was told to you. It was always there at the very beginning before us. That essence of Christ was there. So my question is, he came in the form of a servant, but what did he do? He said, I am a shepherd to my sheep, sheeple, the deplorable, the ignorant, the lowest of the low, the ones that made all the mistakes, the greatest sinners, the deplorables. What happened? When one of those sheep would leave the flock, what did Christ do? He would search day and night for that one sheep that had strayed. The sheep, the sheeple, the ignorant who had gone off and made another mistake yet again. He still went and did it, and he said, I will do it again and again and again and again. And this is where we need to get off our asses, stop complaining about crap, and get out there and do. Do what? Don't wait for someone else to tell you. If you're really interested, here's the thing. I tell people this who get in arguments with me about human trafficking. Well, I guess you want Matt Gaetz. I said, if you're keeping political score, you don't give a damn about this issue. And if you have real ideas, real solutions about how we can fix this problem, I'm all ears. But otherwise, go find your cult. Go find your cult, because that's where all of this is going to go. people will be finding their cult as a result in this time to be right, to be indignant in their way, fossilized, permanence, all of that. And what I'm saying is the majority of people, 70% of this country wants a third party politically. I would say 70 to 80 to 90% of this country wants a big freaking hug. and 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 let me just say this. This is where it can start tonight when this is over with. Find somebody in your phone that you can pick up the phone and call. Doesn't matter whether it's somebody you've fallen out with or somebody who you are a friend to, and tell them authentically and honestly that time you really appreciate the thing that they did that you didn't appreciate at the time, or didn't let them know that you appreciated so much. You don't know what trajectories you can change when you open your heart and mind and give something to somebody that is authentically from you. Gifts, material items have no value in this time in terms of reversing how somebody emotionally feels. But if you want to begin to heal yourself, one of the things that I learned in this time more than anything else, dude, a young man, I was up in the woods 2 years ago in Lake Arrowhead. He was there to save his brother. He was 22 years old, 24 at most. Young, beautiful, blue eyes, young man working in construction. Struck up a conversation in the mountain with him. And he said, my brother is up here and I've lost him. I've lost my brother because he's gone into heavy drugs, alcohol, partying, and he's dying. And he's his younger brother, his 18-year-old brother. And he told me, though, he said, the reason I do it also is because it helps me too. It heals me too. And I think that's the fundamental essence of what I'm trying to say is you want to heal, you have to heal. If you want to hurt, you're going to hurt. If you want to heal, you have to heal this body and heal this mind. If you've got to turn off all your notifications on your phone to get your Pavlovian dog response broken, do it. If you've got to go outside and stand on the ground in your bare feet 20 to 40 minutes a day for earthing, you can get better health benefits from that than going to the gym. I'm not kidding you. People need to get in touch with this earth again. It will heal you. It will heal your mood. It will help you with your inflammation. It will give you great blood pressure. Like all of these things we have here on this planet right now that we can do to get healthier and stronger. And by doing so, let me just say, I'll wrap this up. By doing so, you raise the vibration of your heart. And by doing so, you raise the vibration of everything around you, including the people that you say you care about so much and would help if you could. These are the things you begin to do. EFT, Emotion Freedom Technique, Havening by Paul McKenna. These are both on YouTube. You can learn how to do them today and you can start changing your life.
God, that's fascinating. All of that was beyond interesting. And we're close to wrapping up, but I do have some more questions because I think it's important. This is ChangeMakers. What you just did, first off, God works in mysterious ways. Things that I needed to hear personally came straight out of your mouth, which was fascinating and always timely. The other question is, you've chosen movies to be your current main outlet in order to spread awareness and create change. Why movies? How movies?
Well, it goes back to Frank Capra told a friend of mine who passed this along to me years ago that you as an artist have a responsibility that if you're going to ask me to surrender 2 of my hours of time, that you can show me something in those 2 hours that can change my life. And that's greater than any president. That's greater than any national leader in terms of I can get you to surrender those 2 hours in the dark and pay attention. Let me give you something really good to think about. Let me show you something authentic and true. And here's what I love about art and why I like film. Film is a mirror into our soul. Film has themes, it has emotions, it has feelings. Film is about feelings. If you think about all the great films that you've ever watched, you may not remember every single scene, but you remember how you felt that first time after watching them. And you remember those times that you go back and watch it and those feelings come back, or you begin to feel the depths and the layers that you didn't see that were there, when you were a child, or maybe when you were a young adult, but you now see it as an adult because you go, oh, that's what this is all about. So art to me is that exploration of the internal, the sort of like you're walking from order into chaos being the unknown, the unconscious of exploration. And you're riding this edge to try to bring into the chaos a structure, an order to it, to understand it. And in the exploration of art, in your expression, in your emotion, in your feeling, it pushes you beyond your thinking mind so that you become, quote, creative. But creativity is not flowing from an intellectual point. It's a heart point, and it's also a higher state of conscious point. It's like if you were schizophrenic in a way that you saw the world from a different angle, and it's very real to you. And now I'm going to show you what that other perception or perspective is, and you see it in another way, and then you see it reflected in yourself. If the artist does its job, the art is not propaganda, which doesn't reinforce itself and doesn't predetermine outcomes or give you feelings that you're supposed to feel or thoughts you're supposed to thought, opinions you're supposed to walk away from. That's not art. That's propaganda. So real art is the one where I create and bake a cake, right? And I put that cake out there, and each person in that room takes a bite of that cake. Each person in that room experiences that cake differently, even though the ingredients are all the same, and it comes from one person. And you will get as many different perspectives as there are people there who tell you, it was all right. Oh, this is the best cake I've ever had. Needs something else. But the thing is that that's exactly what Denzel Washington said years ago. He said, all making a movie is like baking a cake. All I can do is bake that cake, put it out there, let people taste it, and they'll decide for themselves what they think about it. But all I can do is make it. And that's kind of like the experience of art is very much so subjective, but it's also an enriching experience so that it awakens those very things that we don't think and cannot see within ourselves. We see them outside of us, and then they reflect something back into us that wakens us up, shakes us up, makes us pay attention to something that is very important, that the artist has said, no, this for which I have created for you or done, or whatever it is in my exploration in this journey, is the truth that I believe. What do you believe? What do you gain from it? What is it telling you? That's why if art can do that, then it's made its impact so that you can have a discussion and a debate, both internally and externally, if you will, about all the things that you just saw. A recounting of all that you experienced and the dynamic and how it made you feel. And oh my God, can you believe she did that? And of course, it's an actor, but it's like,
right.
That's what I'm saying. We're saying that to ourselves. We're saying these things to ourselves, and yet it is a fictionalized reality. And yet it's as real as anything else. So I love art for that reason, because it, to me, is that higher consciousness, when done right, that says, here's another way of looking at it. That's why I do art.
So you've got since we're almost done, I want to make sure, and honestly, I don't know if we'll have you on Truth Will Set You Free or more, because there's more stuff I want to talk about. I know I want to talk about the Childish Gambino video at one point. I could tell some of your beliefs are going to be deemed Q-like, which it's so funny, because I've talked about the negatives and positives of Q, and ultimately Q's initial purpose was children. They wanted to help in terms of trafficking, and it got bastardized into this Trump's coming back on March 37th. How did this just happen? That's not what this was all about. And I can tell your beliefs and your speaking points are very much the core message, which is when I still thought that all that was positive. So we could talk about that again another time, but I want to make sure we talk about the movie you have coming out. And now that I've heard you your voice so much. Now I get it because it's about Philly. Tell a little bit about it. I could tell that you were. I'm assuming you were born and raised in Philly.
No. So the movie you're talking about is Game Day, and the co-writer of the story, who's also a co-star in the film and one of our co-producers, is from Philly. 3 generations, goes all the way back to his great-grandfather, who actually played on the team before they became the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the movie is not about football. The movie takes place on the day that the Italian-American family from Philadelphia gather once a year to watch their most hated rival, the Dallas Cowboys. But what happens is over 4 quarters of the game, the family's rivalry internally begins to boil to the surface and starts to explode in steps. And where we have, for example, we have the ex-wife. So we have 2 marriages, and we've got 2 sets of children, and we've got the ex-wife coming over who just got out of the hospital after being beaten by her boyfriend. Everybody in this story has something to win and lose. Everybody in this story is fighting for their life. But let me just say, this is really what the film is about. This film is for our time. This is, and I know I'm taking a little bit of boldness, but I'm going to say it. It's true. For those people in Philadelphia right now in the tri-state area, this is the Rocky of your time. This is a group of underdog fighters in a family who are up against the ropes and are fighting for their lives on this day. And their life is going to be changed forever going forward after this one day. The beautiful thing about why I call it the Rocky of this time is that Rocky Balboa, in his journey, in his hero's journey, if you will, he accomplished everything by losing everything. He found himself in that fight. He found himself in the commitment to what he wanted to do. And this is where the movie comes into a higher level of Game Day, which is, it's the theme of "To thy own self be true." So this film is on GoFundMe right now. We're not a big Hollywood studio. I'm trying to raise 20 grand to finish this film. We're already at $13,000. If anybody out there wants to contribute, $10 gets you a copy of the movie. $20 will get you several of our other films, including A Child's Voice. If you do a $100 donation, your name will be in the credits with all of our films. But this is a film that's going to be very, very memorable. There are clips on the GoFundMe that you can watch. It's a professional film, but we need this money to finish it because I don't get my money from Hollywood. I put my own money in. We get outside investors. We're raising the money in pieces. This is how we get 7 films done in 11 years, make an impact in people's lives. And your donation will be used to make this film a top-level movie to be finished and to be seen by as many people as we can get it out there to, because this is a story that can heal a lot of people. I have no doubt that the people from Philadelphia and the tri-state area up there, there's going to be a lot of tears when this film is finished, and there's going to be a lot of phone calls to their mother and father afterwards.
Yeah, the film it's completed. They just need to do the finishing touches. And I watched the GoFundMe video. It looks great. So your accent, you have some hints of Philly in your accent. So where are you actually? I saw you were born in Florida. So where are you actually from?
So my mother and father are both from Missouri.
What part?
St. Louis.
Same. That's where I was from.
Yeah.
Okay.
My mother went to Chaminade. She family Webster Groves, Kirkwood, all of that. She lived out in Whitebridge. Is a long story, but they were both from there. Then Florida, and 19 years in LA, and then here I come back East Coast, and I don't know where I get the East Coast accent. Maybe it's just because I'm thinking of all my friends in Philadelphia.
It must be because you got some of the overwords, like over. Like I can hear a little bit of Philly. I was like, oh, it makes sense all of a sudden, but I guess it just rubbed off on you over time.
Yeah, it did. I love the people up there. Brutal people. Brutal, but they've got heart, man. That's what holds them together. I swear to God, I was looking at all tough people. They settle things like that. That's still. It.
Still, they're not soft. I had a conversation with a bartender one time, and I'm like, why is it that your fans are such assholes? Like why are they so mean? And why, this isn't brotherly love? And he's like, here's the deal. Let me give you a secret about fans from Philadelphia. We don't root for the Eagles. We don't root for the Phillies. We root against the other effing team. That is literally our job. We don't care anything about our own players. We care about rooting against the other team. And it's like, that's such a Philly mentality. It's hilarious.
I love it. Whatever helps them.
Exactly. So what's the goal projected date of actually releasing that? You said you're going to play it in Philly and play it in Philadelphia, and then it's going to go in the big screen, and then it's going to go to digital after that?
Well, it depends. If we do well on theatrical, I have a feeling the television will come in, and then we'll do digital. What I'm going to do for my backers is before it goes live on digital, I'm going to release it to them as a thank you, because here you get to see it before everybody else because you contributed earlier. So our time frame will be November to January. That's when we're gonna go for releasing it theatrically in October, November, and then by January we should have it out digitally.
And where are you based now?
I'm in Georgia.
Okay, that's what somebody said. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna be moving to another state here in the next 6 months or so. But yeah, Georgia, outside of Atlanta.
Got it. Last question I have for you: with all the information you provide, if you Google your name, people know where you stand. Mm-hmm. Do you ever fear for your safety?
That's a very good question. I have dealt with that on a very deep level in conquering my fear of death. I had to do that. I couldn't live in fear and let fear drive me. I do know that there are people out there that, there are people out there who see me as something I'm not, but that's how they see it. I welcome the conversation to tell them, if anybody had, here's what I guess to your point, if there was somebody that had a problem with me, I'm on the internet. You can reach out to me. You don't have to make accusations. You don't have to, but people do. To think about my life in such a way that I would be overprotective, I just can't. I had to let all that go. I really, really had to let that go, and not to be cavalier and some martyr or crusader. But here's my thing. This is why I can say this with certainty. I would not be in the position that I'm in today without Christ Jesus. And it wasn't an easy road to get here. And that belief system of Jesus did not come from a simplistic acceptance of belief alone. I had to walk with him in my journey to heal. And so if you were to quantify, do you regret what you did, because knowing what you know now and the danger that you could potentially be in, would I change that? No, I would not change that for anything in the world, because I found my soul and I reconnected with my child. And that to me is greater than anything that I could ever do in my lifetime on this planet, truly. And so for that reason alone, I can't worry about it.
Love it. Final words, John. Anything you'd like to spread in terms of motivating people to continue creating change or to move themselves to create change?
Yes. In this time, most of us consider ourselves to make decisions between one of two choices. I'm not just talking about in our politics or Coke versus Pepsi, but our conditioned responses to decisions that we make that are, we place importance in. Most of the time, most of us go, it's either this or that, right? This or that. One extreme or the other, pro and con, pain, pleasure, whatever.
Right.
We need to look at a higher level where it can be a little of this, a little of that, and maybe a little bit more of this up here, or this over here, or this over there. And not be limited in our choices of decisions that we can make, but start to use this muscle in here, which is our imagination and our creativity, and return to the play of children. because that's what's going to get us out of this mess in the long term and short, is our imagination and creation of creativity. It's not to build to scale an entire new system. It's how you create community, how you take back all that you have given away in your authority and reclaim your birthright, and know that it's your relationships with people that actually count. One last note about this. We need to be in a place in this country where I can look you in the eye and you can look me in the eye, and we can have our differences, but we know where we stand, such to the point, and that bond is strong enough and that understanding is strong enough that none of this bullshit on television, none of this shit spoken by our politicians, none of this crap spoken by authority figures on television or our celebrity figures can screw with this relationship ever again. We will never, ever need or want to return to a time where we are looking at each other and judging each other without having said a single word or asked a single question. And that's really the advice I give to everybody. Make the commitment to go and strengthen the relationships that you know you can strengthen and build from there. And from that, we will build a new world. It will not have to be like the way it once was, or the one that will come after as a result of this in response to it. We have the ability to put natural law back into the collective, which raises the stakes for all of our children, which is to say the foundation of all of our society is in the future of now, not the future of 3 years from now, of 5 years from now when that child is older. Again, somebody will talk to that child. Somebody will get to that child. So our future starts right now and every moment from here. That's how we have to begin to look at this if we're going to get a hold of this situation and not react to everything that happens to us around us.
It's phenomenal. You have been, like there's different guests. There's like some people are like, oh my God, your story is my favorite story. You win the award for the most interesting show we have had on ChangeMakers. And I really want to make sure we have you on again, whatever show it might be. I think what you talk about is fascinating. I think your come from is the most important thing, because your heart and soul is there along with your information. And that's the type of people that are able to create massive amounts of change. So I want to thank you wholeheartedly, thoroughly. Thank you so much for being on the show, John.
Thank you for having me, man. And thank you to Nikki too, because she and I talked quite a bit and I really like her. She's a great girl.
She great killed woman. It. Yeah, she is amazing. She's been finding great people, and honestly, our last 3 guests have all been people that she's found, and each one continues to impress me. So Nikki, I know she has slight issues with confidence. Nikki, you're killing it right now. You are doing phenomenal. Great job. I just want to thank you, and to everybody out there to end the show. Remember that we all have the power to create change in the world. It starts with the people around us, and most of all, it starts internally. You have to change yourself so you can change the world around you. And I encourage everybody to take that step this week. And I'm going to do what John said, and I am going to call or text some people that politically have stopped talking to me, and I'm going to send some love. Some good friends of mine that I've lost, and I realize I have to be the one to reach out. I'm allowed to be the one to reach out, and I could do those things. So I'm going to take heed to what John Paul said, and I want to appreciate everything from having you guys. I want to appreciate the audience as well. And one last reminder, if you would like to check out the GoFundMe, it's GoFundMe.com. You can see it right there. Just look up Game Day Movie. It's got the little F in there. Thank you guys for watching ChangeMakers. We might do a Concert Avengers tonight. I'm going to get with the crew. We'll find out. I got to drive, so it might be a late night edition. We will see. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for ChangeMakers. John Paul Rice. I don't know if it's John Paul Rice. I don't know what to say. John Paul Rice, thank you so much for being on the show.
Pleasure to be here with you. Thanks so much. God bless.